Hello, this is Linda Lysakowski with our Spiritual Wisdom podcast, and I'm really pleased to introduce to you my guest today. I haven't met her in person yet, but I want to. I'm really excited to. But Karen Oliveto, I'm sorry, I pronounced it wrong there. Um, she has so many things in her biography that I could tell you about, but maybe she'll fill in what I missed. But I think a couple of things that are important is that she was the first woman to serve in the pastor of a United Methodist Church, and the first openly LGBTQ plus community member that was elected as a bishop in the United Methodist Church. She has a Ph.D. in the Sociology of Religion, which I think is really an interesting um, fact, and that's from Drew University. And there's so much more I could tell you. She's also the author of several books. She's the co-author of Talking About Homosexuality, a Congregational Resource, and she's the author of Our Strangely Warmed Hearts, Coming Out into God's Call, and also the author of Together at the Table, Diversity Without Division in the United Methodist Church. So she has a lot of fantastic credits. I couldn't begin to read them all to you or take up the whole podcast. But I'm going to start by asking you, obviously, Karen, you have broken more than one glass ceiling. I think probably three or four or five at least. So do you want to tell us what it's like to be a woman breaking those stained glass ceilings, is the
Yeah,
way you worded it, which is really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Well, thank you. First, Linda, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor to be here with you. And um, I have several firsts. I was the first pastor to perform a legal same gender wedding in a United Methodist Church.
Oh,
I wasn't the first woman appointed to a church. I was the first woman appointed to one of our 100 top membership churches. So I was the only woman in that field for the longest time. And then the first openly LGBTQ plus bishop elected. Um, it's not easy, right? I mean, we women know that the world has not been forced or the institutions weren't created for us. And as we've found our passion and found our calling, it's not easy sometimes to step into those spaces where um, what a woman brings is not only not uh, it isn't created for, but also not always welcomed. So I have to say, I just kept trying to be faithful to my call. Um, you know, Technically, I shouldn't have been a United Methodist pastor as a lesbian, but I had a call, and people recognized that call. And so I just kept being faithful to that call. And it led me to places I never could have imagined, to serve a 12,000 member church, to be a bishop in the United Methodist Church. People say, "Oh, you are so courageous." It's not about courage. So if you are feeling called to go to a place where you think you might not be welcomed, um, it's not about having courage to step into those spaces. It's about being faithful to the fact that you belong in those spaces, and that's where you're best going to be able to serve.
I think that's really a great way to look at it. I think so much of it is, yeah, I'm a Roman Catholic myself, and of course we don't have women in the clergy at all yet. We're possibly talking about women deacons and
Hmm.
the synod coming up, who knows? And there's a lot of areas that they're looking into changing, hopefully. But I think you're so right about we all have a vocation, and if our calling or vocation is to lead in the church, then you've got to follow that.
That's right.
So I think it did take courage, but also I think, just the passion of knowing what your calling is and being able to
Right.
follow it is amazing.
Well, and it creates a cognitive dissonance in people, right? Because people would say, well, as a lesbian, you can't be a bishop, but we see that you're called to be a bishop, right? And so that cracks open the world for people. And how great to have minds expand by
Absolutely.
our presence.
Yes, that's so true. tell me a little, if you don't mind, a little bit about how you've been received. I mean, I'm sure you've had probably some pushback from people within. First of all, being a pastor of a 12,000 member church is just incredibly amazing to start with. But tell us a little bit about how you have been received in church.
Well, I I have run the gamut, right? I mean, there's people who, when I was elected bishop, were extremely angry. They said, the people who elected you and you broke the rules of the church. And I try to stay very open. In fact, um, because I didn't know if I would enter into a hostile room or a welcoming space, I would sit outside every single church that I visited. And I would pray in the parking lot, give me an undefended heart and help me be generous in love. And I
Hmm.
would enter a room with that love. Now, people are hungry for love. We are a love-starved people. And when you bring that love into a room, people respond. And because I was going in not feeling like I had to defend myself, but being undefended, it caused people to be undefended as well. So, I really tried to disarm people with a generous spirit and loving them. And um that's the way I moved in the world.
Have you seen some people change their viewpoints because of that love and because of
Oh,
your?
I had bishops even say, I thought I knew where I stood, but I've seen you and I've seen your wife and how the two of you move in this world, and I realize I've been wrong.
Oh,
So,
that's really
but that's not me. That's their heart opening up, right?
But I think your response probably had a lot to do with that. I would imagine. So have you ever just been really shut down and had to really think and pray and maybe even go to authorities about it?
One, because there was so much anger and hostility towards me being a bishop, um, actually alt-right and white supremacist groups started to get very vocal, and we needed a bodyguard for 18 months. So it would have been easy to shut down. I had a spiritual director because I didn't want to shut down. That's not who I am. And I can't serve being shut down. And that spiritual director was a lifeline to keeping me open-hearted.
Oh, that's good to hear. I have a friend who's a spiritual director. She happens to be a Roman Catholic sister. She serves all types of people with her spiritual direction,
Mm-hmm.
and I find it really
Oh,
helpful.
it's
Some of the spiritual direction I've had has helped me grow in my
very
faith.
helpful, very helpful.
Yeah, so that must be an interesting field as well. One of the things that you mentioned to me that I was a little fascinated with because I've not heard this expression before, but you're you mentioned an empathy deficit, which I think is probably very prevalent in our world. But tell us a little bit more about that. Find it fascinating.
Well, I was really struck when I was getting so much hate and so much anger. Um, People had no awareness of how that hate and anger was impacting me and my personhood. But then that required me to say, okay, what is it about me and the fact that I was elected a bishop that has made them so angry and so hostile? And that required me to have empathy for them. But I look around the world, I look at what's going on, especially in the United States right now. We're actually being groomed to have no empathy, to not see the humanity of another. So my spiritual director gave me the best bit of advice. She said, because she was the first openly lesbian in her denomination to be ordained.
Hmm.
And so she's done a lot of LGBT rights. And she said, there's this minister who used to be just very, very anti-gay and said horrible, horrible things, who had a change of heart and now is an incredible ally. And she said to him once, she said, what were you thinking when you were saying such disparaging and dehumanizing things about us? What did you think about us? He said, I didn't. I didn't see you as human. And that we're not seeing each other as having a shared humanity. And it will be the downfall of the United States. We're seeing, that we could lock people up who are seeking to do the right thing, lock them up with no due process. And the way we are allowing racism to be reintroduced into our systems and institutions, not covertly, very overtly. When this administration says that, our museums, are telling are saying that slavery was bad, it's like, there's no question slavery was bad. So how do we regain a sense that there's this commonality, a thread of commonality that runs through everyone, that relates us to one another, that your well-being impacts my well-being. Not if you have a good well-being, I suffer. No, and somehow that's where it's become. If you have rights, I must have less. That's not the case. But it's because we lack empathy that we're able to have that stance of, I'm going to have the whole pie. You don't get any of it.
I think I've seen that. I guess it was a meme or something about that. Because somebody else is getting a piece of pie, it's not a pie. You're not getting less
That's right.
because somebody else
Exactly.
got a piece as well.
Exactly. And and I think it stems from the hyper individualism that has been fostered in the United States. I now live in Canada, in retirement, and I'm so struck. The starting point here isn't individual, it's the community, and just how that impacts how you move and see the world. It's been pretty powerful.
I've heard that from a lot of my Canadian friends, and I think it's really true. We really are suffering from this. As I mentioned, I'm Roman Catholic, and we are now in the process of trying to have canonized. He's on his last step. Father Augustus Tolton. I don't know if you've heard of him, but I just found out that he was actually born in Missouri, where I live now. So we're doing a pilgrimage to the plantation he was born on and the church he was baptized in. And then his father first escaped and went to fight for the Union Army. And then he and the rest of his family went to Chicago, but he wanted to become a priest and he actually had to go to Rome. Now, this is, of course, during Civil War days.
Wow.
But he had to go to Rome because there was not a seminary in this country that would take a black man. And
Wow.
and now he's hopefully going to be a saint very soon. But just when you think about this and you think, oh, that's awful. That was Civil War days. But have we really come much further? I mean,
We've gone back. I think we've gone back, actually. I
yeah.
mean, it's been very sad. The gains we thought we made in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s are quickly being eroded by voting, the voting redistricting so much to disenfranchise people who aren't like us,
Hmm.
meaning white.
Right. Old, white, and straight, I think is
Exactly. Right.
the
Right. So it concerns me because where are our spiritual values when we allow these decisions
Mhm.
to become concretized? Because our religious values talk about our that love is central. How are we embodying love? Love isn't just not meant for our religious institutions. Love is to be brought into the world to every aspect of our lives. And that's the foundation of every spiritual path.
Right. Do you think that there's hope that we can somehow bring about unity in the midst of all this diversity?
And I'll say this as a Christian, we are having such a hard time with diversity. We've been told actually, no, we've got to get rid of it. And as a Christian, I believe in the Holy Trinity, right? Creator, Christ, the Holy Spirit. diversity is built into the Godhead, right? Three in one, one in three. If we believe in the Trinity, we have to believe and value the sacredness of diversity, but we don't seem to. But when we recognize that diversity enhances our life, it makes our life richer, it makes our community richer. Um, that's where the unity is born, not because we are threatened by that diversity. If we're threatened by diversity, there will never be unity. But if we see it as something that just adds a texture and richness that would be missing from our lives if it wasn't there, that's when we foster unity.
I think it's so needed in this world. I'm intrigued by some of the books you've written because I'm an author, and in fact, the book that I'm writing now, it's ready to be published very soon, is really about a different type. Well, it's I guess all types of diversity, but it's Francis of Assisi, the universal saint,
Mhm.
and in it I explore from different faith perspectives and from people who say they're atheists and not religious at all, but they resonate very closely with Francis because of his love for all of human, not just all of humankind, but all of creation, really. And I found that I really feel like there are more similarities major religions than there are differences, but people
Yeah.
focus on the differences and say, oh, well, they believe this, and well, we basically all believe very much the same thing, I think.
Hmm.
And we need to kind of get that in all corners of our world. But tell me about the books that you've written as an author. I was fascinated by some of the books that you've written. So tell me a little bit about those and what they're all about.
Sure.
And we'll give people links so they can buy those
Okay.
books
Thank you.
too.
Thank you. So yeah, the first one I was invited to write with a couple of other women. And it was to help congregations learn how to talk about homosexuality or to foster that kind of engagement together, that kind of wrestling. But it was interesting because as we were writing it, we realized, holy cow, not only does the church not know how to talk about homosexuality, it doesn't know how to talk about sexuality in general. We in the United Methodist Church talk about sexuality being a good gift from God, but we don't unpack that statement. What does that mean? And so that book we wrote specifically to help congregations engage in the conversation. We didn't we didn't try to give the answers. We tried to give the opening for exploration. Then when I was elected, two publishing companies invited me to write. And so that the Our Strangely Warmed Hearts, I was actually part of my doctoral dissertation. I wanted to explore the relationship between the, the understanding of homosexuality in the United States, overlay then the understanding and experience of homosexuality in the United Methodist Church, because most people didn't know that history. And then because the United Methodist Church had actually institutionalized the silencing of LGBT voices because of a funding ban. You couldn't fund anything that was going to promote homosexuality. So gay people couldn't speak for themselves.
Mm.
So I invited LGBT people, United Methodists from around the world, clergy and laity, to talk about their faith story and their coming out story, which are often one and the same, right? I mean, our sexuality is linked to our spirituality. And to introduce people to have some stories that they could hopefully enter into. And then the last story was again my curiosity around why are people so upset at my election? And it was a framework to help me understand them as much as hopefully helping people understand me a little bit more. So Together at the Table really stems from the experience I had of dinner tables in my childhood home and with family where you never excluded anyone from the table. If we were playing with our friends, my mother always made sure there was enough pasta to feed not just my sisters and me, the three of us, but also, the five other friends who were with us. And and that to me is in essence what communion is about. Communion, when we reach for that cup and for that and for the bread, we are we are entering into Christ's table, which is extended to all. So that's what that book is about.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to get a hold of your books myself.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I have some friends I'd like to share them with, even if
yeah,
they're not Methodist. So some of my
yeah,
friends
yeah,
are
yeah,
Methodist too.
yeah.
Um, and so I think it would be a great thing to share with people. You had mentioned also something to me, the beloved community. Is that really possible? Do we have a chance at becoming a beloved community?
You know, I believe that is what we are called to do, to live into God's realm, is beloved community. And is it possible? I'm struck, that was the theme of my leadership as a bishop, moving into beloved community. And I was struck by how many people would say, Bishop, what is that? And hopefully each of us has tasted a little bit of beloved community as we've been growing up, as we've been in different groups. But that place where equality and equity and justice exists for all, where all are valued, I have to believe that's possible. Otherwise, my life work is in vain, and my faith would be in vain. So I'm not stopping trying to help co-create that with God and with other community builders.
Good, good. You had, I think you mentioned it at the very beginning that you're retired now. Is that correct?
Yes, I retired a year ago, September.
Oh, wow, lucky you.
So we keep the office as bishop. We keep the office. I'm just not considered an active bishop.
oh,
So I get to pick and choose where I might be able to serve well, like saying yes to you, Linda, to be a part of your podcast.
well, you look too young to be retired, first of all.
Well, thank you. Another 4 years, and I would, and not even another 3 years, and I would hit mandatory retirement age.
Oh.
So thank you for saying how young I look.
But so what's your plan in retire? If you're like most of the priests I know who are supposedly retired, actually now they're starting to call them senior clergy. They don't even say they're
Right,
retired
right,
anymore
right,
because they know they don't really retire. So what are your
right.
plans?
Well, I'm called to a life of service, and that hasn't changed. I say yes to people and organizations where I think I might be able to bring some value. Um, I think I'll do some writing. And we're in a tiny town of 600 people. I want to be a part of the town in a way I couldn't be as a pastor, right? And so loving volunteering. And the other thing is living this life of service, it's meant that I haven't always um, uh, nurtured parts of me. Like, I have an interest in music. How can I now make space to do music? I want to fish. I never took time to do, I literally lived this full life of giving, as the extension of being the arms and legs of Christ, which I think all of us are called to do.
Right.
But now it's kind of fun to say, I want to learn how to speak French now that I'm living in Canada. So that's been really fun too. And I think that's what's keeping me young.
Good, good. Well, I know I'm 82. I'll be 83 this year, and I don't plan to ever retire.
I love it. Love it. You don't look 82.
Well, sometimes I feel like I'm
Yeah.
82, but sometimes I still feel pretty young.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
depends on
Yeah.
if you're talking about physically or mentally, I
There
guess.
you go.
You mentioned writing. Is there another book in the future?
I'm waiting for one to emerge. There might be a children's book that there's a constant refrain that keeps coming up that I think would make a good children's book. So,
Oh,
but there will be, I think there'll be one or two other books. So, but
I'm
right
sure.
now, taking this year, I walked the Camino a couple
Oh,
of months ago as a way to sink into this new season and new rhythm of life. And so I'm not unlike before, I'm not rushing to give birth to things, right? I'm going to let them have full gestation.
How did you find walking the Camino? I had several friends, some of them who did the whole entire thing, but I was wondering what that experience was like for you.
It was filled with God moments. It was very powerful, and we walked the Portuguese coastal route. So we came up from the south up into the north, and it was just the kind, to get up in the morning, to walk, to turn your thoughts to God, and just an awareness of where you were. It was profound. God was very chatty on that walk.
But God sometimes can be that way, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
I think you mentioned that your wife is also involved in the church as a deacon or
A
deaconess.
deaconess, a
Yeah.
deaconess. And
Okay.
that's a lay order in the United Methodist Church and several other Protestant denominations.
Mhm.
A lay order for people who feel they are called to, with whatever their field is, a life of justice, service, and love. I know I feel bad.
Mm.
Justice, service, and love. And so she was a nurse anesthetist and felt that that was her ministry. And so, yeah, so.
And did she retire also when you did?
She retired earlier
Oh.
because we knew when I was elected, um, you know, marriage equality had only just been legally across the country in 2015. So to have this married lesbian bishop, most people in the area where I served Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. Not only would they probably say, well, we don't know any gay people, but they would also say, well, what's a married lesbian couple? So we knew we had to show our lives as honestly and openly as we could. So it was um, a joint venture in many ways.
Great. Well, this has just been fascinating. I probably missed a lot of questions I could be asking you. Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to add to this story?
No.
Anything that we should all be thinking about doing maybe in our own lives?
Well, I would say, how do you keep yourself open? How do you keep your heart open, especially to the suffering of others right now? There is a lot of suffering, and we have to make space for that suffering to be heard by those in power. We have to resist those systems and decisions that are doing harm. Um, and I feel that our faith as a spiritual people, we are compelled to do that. So keep open-hearted.
Well, that's great advice, I think, for everybody. But as I said, I could probably go on for hours here with you, but I know you have probably
Yeah,
you
thank
have
you.
French to learn, you have
That's
music,
right. That's right. And we have
you have
friends
books to
who
write.
the hurricane, some friends have been on a cruise. The hurricane forced them to come to Halifax. And so we have some friends in that we weren't
Oh,
expecting. So I'll
oh,
look forward to
good.
going and return with them. But Linda, this has been great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in conversation together.
And I want to thank you and definitely I'll recommend your books to everybody because I want to get a hold of them myself. So
Thank you.
thank you again for being on, and I really appreciate all your insights. And I think our audience is going to appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.